1910s, Hartford, Connecticut. Once, the jokes of America's most famous writer echoed through these rooms. Tonight, a tour guide turns off the lights and whispers, "Are you sure you want to hear the dark story of Mark Twain's mansion? This house was built as a dream. Here, Mark Twain laughed with his daughters, wrote his best books, and believed he had finally found his forever home. Christmas trees stood in these corners. Dinners were held for famous guests. Stories rolled like thunder around the fireplace. Then came the first blow, a daughter's illness, a bed she would never rise from again. The second, failed investments. Debts, a fortune slipping through his fingers. The third, a decision that still tightens your throat, to leave the home that now smelled not of joy, but of grief. The mansion was rented out, cut into offices, turned into cheap apartments. A strange, dark maze where tenants whispered about footsteps in empty halls and the shadow of a small girl on the stairs. Decades later, someone proposed leveling it, just to build a parking lot. And then, one last chance at saving it emerged. How did a house built for laughter become a ghost of its own story? And how did it escape destruction against all odds? He house that laughed before it went quiet. The tour guide flicks the switch. Darkness swallows the drawing room of Mark Twain's mansion. 20 visitors stand very still. Outside, traffic hums on Farmington Avenue. Inside, the silence feels older than the street itself. Can a house remember grief? The guide asks. A phone screen flickers, then dies. He continues. Hear Samuel Clemens Mark. Twain read stories to his 3 daughters every night. Right by that fireplace, he made them laugh. He made a nation laugh. He pauses, then lowers his voice. In 1896, his eldest daughter Susie died upstairs. She was 24. Meningitis. Her parents weren't home. After that night, this house never laughed again. The lights snap back on. Visitors move along their route. Billiard room. Carved wood. Stained glass. The grand staircase. But one visitor lingers. Her name is Maya. 28. Architecture vlogger. Camera bag on one shoulder. Notebook in hand. She came for Content Victorian Excess, a famous writer's home. Solid visuals. She didn't expect the story to hit this hard. She lost her father 2 years ago. The family sold his house within months. Too expensive to keep. Too painful to visit. She hasn't let herself think about that home. Until now, standing in the front hall, she stares up at the staircase where a coffin once descended. This is where Susie Clemens left the house forever. Maya moves through the dining room. The long table sits set with period china, as if the family might return at any moment. They never did. After Susie's death, they came back only once, to pack. Then they left Hartford for good. The mansion was carved into apartments. Rooms once filled with America's most famous family became anonymous rentals. By the 1920s, you could live here and never know who had laughed in these halls. Maya climbs the back stairs, steeper, narrower, used only by servants. 6 or 7 staff once lived here. Cooks, maids, a coachman. Most of their names are forgotten. At the top stands Susie's bedroom. Small, plain, a single bed, floral wallpaper, a writing desk. This is where the dream cracked, where childhood ended, where the belief that success and love could protect you was proven wrong. Maya takes a photo, then lowers her phone. Wind rattles the window. The house creaks softly. This isn't just a house, she thinks. It's a monument to everything they lost. On the desk lies a reproduction of one of Susie's letters, hopeful handwriting from a young woman who never got her future. As Maya walked down the grand staircase, her hand trailing across the polished banister, she could feel the history in the wood. Every curve, every stained glass panel, every splash of color. It was all chosen, planned, dreamed. What did Mark Twain see when he first stood on this very hill, back in 1873? History tells us the answer. Farmington Avenue was just a muddy road. The clatter of factories echoed in the distance. Hartford was a growing city, but this particular hill was empty land. Here stood Samuel Clemens, 37 years old, successful, ambitious, and newly wealthy, alongside his architect, Edward Tuckerman Potter. Clemens envisioned a home bursting with energy children, jokes, boisterous dinner parties. His wife, Olivia, longed for safety, a warm, stable place after years of living in hotels and rented rooms. Their initial budget was set at $45,000. The final cost ballooned to nearly $70,000, an absolute fortune in 1874. The house rose from the earth, a magnificent structure of brick, timber, stained glass, and intricately carved wood. It was a marvel of its time, featuring windows by Louis Comfort Tiffany and walls covered in embossed leather. It had modern conveniences like running water and gas lighting. Later, they even installed a telephone. This wasn't just a house, it was a statement. It was American ambition made solid. By 1874, the Clemens family moved in. Their 3 daughters, Susie, Clara, and Jean, filled the halls with laughter. They truly believed they had built a perfect world for themselves, a safe haven. They couldn't possibly know that this sense of perfect safety would only last for 17 years. Maya stepped into the library, and the room felt instantly alive. Books climbed the walls from floor to ceiling. Chairs were gathered near the fireplace, as if waiting for a family that had just stepped out for a moment. She could almost see the scene. Clemens reading aloud, his voice shifting dramatically for every character. His 3 girls curled up on cushions, and Olivia listening with her gentle smile. For nearly 2 decades, this house was everything they had dreamed it would be. Upstairs, in the billiard room, a different kind of magic was happening. This was Twain's creative sanctuary, where he wrote some of his most iconic works. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, The Prince and the Pauper, and the masterpiece, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Downstairs, the dining room roared with laughter during lavish dinner parties. Guests from New York, Boston, and even Europe would gather around the long table. Clemens, a natural showman, would hold court brilliant, theatrical, seemingly unstoppable. The house was a hub of joy. Christmas trees towered in the front hall. Music rang from the piano. The girls would often sneak to the top of the staircase at night, peering down to watch the grown-ups laugh and celebrate. The entire home was a whirlwind of sound, light, jokes, and constant motion. But beneath this vibrant surface, a crack was beginning to form. Its name was money, the one ghost that no mansion, no matter how grand, can ever truly escape. Maya then found her way into a small study. Unlike the grand, public rooms, this one was plain. The chair was worn, the desk simple. This was where reality lived. This was the room of bills, of difficult letters, of numbers that stubbornly refused to add up. By the early 1880s, Mark Twain was a global celebrity, but the mansion itself was a massive expense, costing $35,000 a year just to maintain. That covered heating, staff, food, parties, and endless repairs. He was earning a great deal of money, but he was spending even more. Worse, he was investing boldly and badly. He poured fortunes into a typesetting machine, a publishing company, and a string of other ventures that promised riches but delivered debt. Some weeks, the house sparkled with live music, laughter, distinguished guests. But on other nights, Clemens would sit right here, in this small room, in complete silence, staring at ledgers that no longer made any sense. Olivia felt the strain deeply. She managed everything: the staff, the meals, the girls' education, the demanding social calendar. On the surface, the house remained a picture of perfection. But inside, unseen, the cracks were slowly spreading. By 1889, the tension was palpable, so much so that even young Susie wrote about it in her journal. Still, the family kept up appearances. The parties continued. The laughter still echoed through the halls. To the outside world, they were the happiest family in the happiest home in Hartford. But to themselves, in the quiet moments, They knew the dream was slipping away. She opens the letter with trembling hands. Inside is a formal note typed on thick stationery, the kind used for serious decisions. The message is short, almost understated. Your request has been reviewed. The foundation is prepared to commit $50,000 toward the preservation of the Clemens property, contingent upon matching funds being raised locally. Ellaner stares at the number. $50,000 in 1956 feels like a miracle. It is more money than she has ever seen in her life, more money than she ever believed anyone would give to save this broken house. She sinks into her kitchen chair, the letter pressed against her chest. For the first time in months, she lets herself cry, not out of fear, but out of relief. The house has a chance. Within days, Hartford's newspapers explode with the news. Foundation pledges support for Twain House. Local committee makes progress. Developer agrees to extend deadline. The tone shifts. Suddenly, the story is no longer about decay. It is about possibility. Donations begin arriving faster now. A bookstore hosts a reading event and fills 2 jars with change. A local attorney sends a check for $250. School children mail hand-drawn envelopes containing $1 bills, stapled to construction paper with messages like "Save Mark Twain's home." For the first time, Ellaner believes they might actually do it. But then, the collapse. Hartford, late summer, 1956. After weeks of heavy rain, the weakened roof gives way. A massive section of the north wing buckles, sending rotted beams crashing into the old billiard room. Neighbors hear the crumble and run outside. Dust billows from broken windows. The police arrive. Then the fire department. Then the city inspector. His verdict is swift and cold. This structure is unsafe. It should be demolished. Headlines shift again overnight. Twain House collapses, may be lost forever. Repairs now impossible. Officials say Ellaner feels as if someone has punched the breath out of her. All the work, all the hope undone. She goes to the site herself, stands behind the yellow tape, and sees the destruction. Beams exposed like broken bones, shattered windows, the sky visible through what used to be a ceiling. For a moment, she wavers. Is this the end? Is this the universe telling her the house is beyond saving? But then she hears a voice behind her. A young man, a college student holding a camera. He says softly, "Ma'am, even broken things deserve someone to fight for them." She closes her eyes. The grief hardens into resolve. The collapse will not be the end. It will be the turning point. Ellaner and her committee begin again, louder, stronger, more determined than ever. And that is how the miracle truly begins. The front steps are empty now, bathed in the fading glow of Hartford dusk. Maya sits there, her camera rolling, but she is quiet for a moment, letting the house speak in its silence. "This house was built as a dream," she says softly, her voice barely louder than the evening wind. Then it turned into a nightmare. Then it turned into almost nothing. Just a warrant of cheap rooms where forgotten people tried to survive. The camera pans slowly across the catching shadows in the carved wood, the faint glimmer of stained glass catching the last light. Inside, each polished floorboard and restored ceiling tells a story not only of Mark Twain and his family, not only of Ellaner's tireless fight, but of the thousands of small lives that once existed here quietly, anonymously, almost erased by time. Maya's footage moves into the attic, where she discovered EM's journal, the fragile pages whispering of winters in coats, cramped rooms, and the quiet endurance of ordinary people. She reads aloud, "We existed here, too. That should count for something." Her voice trembles slightly. It is not the grandeur that moves her, but the resilience, the persistence of memory, care, and humanity that refuse to let the mansion vanish completely. Montage, volunteers sanding woodwork, archivists carefully examining letters, stained glass panels gleaming under careful hands, and the mansion gradually emerging from decades of neglect. Each image underscores a painstaking devotion, a labor of love spanning decades. Maya turns the lens on the small, unsung heroes, retired teachers, students, local craftsmen whose hands rebuilt the house, often unseen by the visiting public. Each action, each donation, each hour of volunteer work stitched the mansion back together, room by room, floor by floor, until it could stand safely, proudly, again. The video shifts outside again. The mansion rests atop its gentle rise, windows glowing faintly in the twilight. Maya leans forward. "It is never truly finished," she says, "because what was lost can never be perfectly recovered. But it can be honored, it can be remembered. And that is enough to keep its heart alive." The screen fades to black. A final caption appears. "This house is more than a home for a famous writer. It is a repository of lives, known and unknown, that shaped its history. We remember them all." The sound of the wind in the trees lingers for a moment, soft and melancholy, then silence. This house is now a museum. But what does that really mean? I think it means we chose to remember. Not just the famous writer, not the wealth or the books or the lavish parties. We chose to remember the grief, the failure, the loss, the years when this house was broken and no one cared. We remember all of it because that is the only honest way to love something. When we first shared this story, it didn't explode overnight. It was a slow, steady climb. 10,000 views grew into 50,000, then 100,000. The comments started pouring in, each one a personal echo of the house's long history. One person wrote, "My grandmother lived in that house in the 1930s. She never told us it was Mark Twain's house. She just said it was cold and sad. Thank you for remembering her." Another comment read, "My family is going through foreclosure right now. This video made me cry, but also gave me hope. Houses can come back. Families can live through loss." And then there was this one from someone who works in historic preservation. "This is the clearest explanation I have seen of why we do this work. It's not just about buildings. It's about refusing to let stories disappear." These comments, these shared experiences, created a ripple effect we never could have anticipated. Soon, the Mark Twain House and Museum itself reached out. They were planning a new exhibit, one that would tell the full story of the mansion's life, every era, every layer, not just the famous Clemens family years. They wanted to feature the journal that started this whole journey. Of course, we agreed immediately. The opening day of the exhibit was a powerful experience. It wasn't a huge, flashy display. It was small, precise, and deeply moving. There, in a climate-controlled case, was the old notebook. Beside it were photographs from the mansion's tenement years, showing a side of the house few had ever seen. There was even a reconstructed list of residents from the 1920s and 30s, names that had almost been lost to time. And above the entire display, printed in bold, was a single, powerful line from the journal. "We existed here too. That should count for something." The impact on visitors was immediate and visible. School groups would pause their chatter to read the text. Tourists, who came to see the home of a literary giant, lifted their phones to capture this other, equally important history. But the most incredible moments came from the older Hartford residents, who began sharing their own memories, their voices echoing through the restored hallways. One woman, 93 years old, approached the display and whispered, "My father rented an office here in 1941. I visited once as a girl. I remember thinking it was the saddest building I had ever seen. So beautiful, but so broken." She turned, her eyes sweeping across the restored drawing room, now glowing under careful lighting, its wood polished to a warm sheen. "I am glad it came back," she said, a small smile on her face. Standing there, I felt the exact same way. It made me think about how houses haunt us, not with ghosts, but with memory, with the sheer weight of everything they have witnessed and held within their walls. This house has seen it all: immense joy and devastating grief, staggering success and absolute ruin, deep love and cold abandonment, global fame and near total anonymity. And somehow, against all odds, it survived. This isn't just a building, it's a testament to care, to memory, to resilience. It's a living archive of human experience, fragile yet incredibly enduring. The scars are still here, in the corners and under the polished surfaces, reminders of the difficult years. But they are now part of a larger story, a complete story. We remember the famous author, yes, but we also remember the struggling families who found shelter here. We remember the small businesses that tried to make a go of it within these walls. We remember the period of neglect when it seemed the house would be lost forever. We remember, so that no one is ever truly forgotten. Thanks for watching.